Welcome to episode 62 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I read Twilight, and I thought it sucked. Not very realistic at all.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and I have a reliable internet connection. There are no storms out here, so we won't lose power and then lose half the recording like has happened before.
So our guest today is Chad Lutzke. Chad, I want to thank you for coming to the show. And
thanks for having me.
And second, I want to tell you, I hadn't even heard of the Transfiguration. Don tells me that one of my heroes, Rebecca McKendry, told him about it. I'm going to pretend that I wasn't there. That way, I can say that's why I didn't watch it.
Plausible deniability.
So, Chad, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I will try. I'm really horrible with that. I'm an author. I've written, I think, something like 12 books, novellas mainly. I've been writing for at least professionally, semi-professionally for 6 years now. And I have a podcast called Paleo Cheese Podcast with my friend Jeremiah Bannister, where we kind of do what you guys do. And I didn't know that until I think that's the reason I'm on here tonight with you guys, is because I found out on Twitter, and then James and I started talking a little bit, and I thought, oh crap, somebody else is doing what I thought was such a great idea, getting guests on to talk about a movie that they choose, and talking about books and music and TV or whatever, and so really thanks for having me on. I go on podcasts all the time. I get really tired of talking about myself. So to be on something like this is extra special for me, because I love film, I love music, and anytime I get the opportunity to talk about them, it's always a good time for me.
Awesome. I'm still going to talk about you, but I want to use one of the things you just said. I'm always fascinated by, when I'm writing, I basically have a soundtrack of what I think is going on in the film. Like, if it was a film version. Like, when I wrote Fat Camp, for instance, every kill scene, I listened to Judas by Fozzy, because to me, that's what would play if there was a film. Do you do anything like that? Since you like music so much, do you set a soundtrack to what you are writing, or do you write to any specific bands?
I've done that a couple times. I normally don't, because it distracts me, because I'm also a musician, so I think too much about the music, and unless it's more of like an ambient thing, like I can't listen to anything that's really, really going to grab my attention. But there has been a couple books that I've written that where my book Skullface Boy, he listens to a lot of Kiss. So I made a soundtrack just with a bunch of Kiss, and then there were some scenes that had a couple of other like 70s rock bands in there, and then so during those scenes, I did do that. And then I wrote a book called The Same Deep Water as You. And I listened to nothing but The Cure's Disintegration while writing that. And but other than that, I usually don't do that.
Huh, cool. Don, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Do you use music for your writing?
I do. I have a couple of specific channels on Pandora. The book I wrote, Bastards of the Bayou, there was a lot of Zydeco music playing while I was writing the book, and I actually wrote a line in the book about listening to Zydeco. And then in the one I'm writing right now, there is a lot of Nina Simone that I'm listening to, and then a good amount of 90s grunge music to mix stuff in with.
Oh, nice. So, Chad, you chose the Transfiguration, which, like I said, I hadn't even heard of. I know Don had, and he had it on his watch list for a while, just never got around to it. So we were both new going into this. Obviously you weren't. So tell me why you chose it.
I chose it because I'm a huge fan of slow burn, quiet horror stuff, or just like indie movies in general.
Okay.
There's certain feel about them that I just really appreciate. And the books that I write, most of my influence doesn't come from literature, but from indie films that are heavy on dialogue, character driven. And this felt, when I saw the movie, it just felt like something that I would have written, because I don't write supernatural stuff. And if I'm going to, it's going to be something like this, where it's kind of ambiguous. And I also really appreciate the fact that, they've got this black kid, how that's not usually the case. It's usually the pale-skinned white dude with the knows all about computers and whatever else, just the introvert. And it wasn't like that. And so it was completely different take. And I really appreciated seeing that. It made it that much more original for me. And I'm constantly looking for, unpredictable or completely original films. And so I knew that this one wouldn't, it hasn't been talked about a lot. And so I figured it might be a good one. Plus, I just thought maybe there would be something cool to talk about it as far as like social commentary with, the fact that it takes place in the, inner city, like ghetto area, and stars a black kid.
Oh, yeah. So, Chad, tell me about the first time you saw this and your initial thoughts.
When I think I watched it, I don't think it was this year. I think it was last year. I think it was like a year ago. And I knew right away that it's just an indie film. It's got those, like, there's no dialogue for quite a while. And it's just quiet shots. And I'm so attracted to that I knew right away I was going to really enjoy it. I think the opening shot, I was a little disappointed because I think I read the synopsis and I was hoping because the first scene, he's killing some dude in the bathroom stall, sucking dude's blood right out of his neck. And I remember being a little disappointed that it was started out like that it had already jumped to that. I thought it would have been even cooler because I'm assuming the guy that was in the bathroom too, he was probably thinking something else was going on in there. And I thought it would have been cool to have us think that same thing. And not, because we don't know this guy, for all we know that something else could have been going on in that stall. And then maybe we don't find out later. But I do recall that, not that it was any kind of big deal, because I just love the movie as a whole. But I do remember that about the opening scene, that I was just slightly disappointed that it started like that.
Yeah, no, I thought the exact same thing. I kind of thought, if you're going to keep this scene, and I'm not sure that I would, but if I was going to keep this scene, I would have made you think something else is happening there.
Yeah.
I wanted the kid to come out, look at the other man, just totally ashamed, like he got caught doing this gross thing, and then leave.
Yeah.
And that guy's like totally grossed out, but then have the camera pan over and you see the aftermath of that kill, and holy shit, I think that'd be way more powerful.
I agree completely.
So he takes the guy's money, puts it in his pocket, and he leaves. And he goes home and he puts the money in a big bag of cash. And I don't know what to make of this part, because they do live in the projects and he's got all of this money. And I get that maybe it's not enough to move somewhere nice, but it's enough to at least start something, right? I'm used to vampire stories where it's almost like bored rich kids.
Yeah.
So that was really refreshing to me. And I do think it's absolutely fascinating how much his environment plays into what happens here in regard to his hopelessness and the choices he makes not to leave. Let's spend a moment talking about his environment. He lives with his brother because both of his parents died. He lives in the project, like I said. Everything around him is bad news, He's got gang members downstairs. He's got so much going on here. Don, I know you're dying to talk about how much he wants to escape his reality. So walk me through it.
I like that. Well, one, just to reiterate what Chad was saying, the idea that it's a weird black kid, and he's using vampirism or vampire mythology as a way to escape from this situation, because there are so many things. He's living in the projects. There are so many ways that he could escape through what are seen as conventional ways, right? Mm-hmm. Play a sport, deal drugs, do, a lot of these things that you typically associate with people trying to escape from the projects. For him, it's writing his book about vampires and then acting that stuff out, even to the point where, the drug dealers, the gang members that are there, just refer to him as the freak, and it's like, oh, hey, freak, you weirdo. Just they know that there's something about him that they don't like. And the fact is, it's because he's different and he's not doing the same stupid shit that they're doing. And he's finding not necessarily a positive way to escape, but he's finding a different way to escape than they are used to doing or passing on. Because even his brother, like, he goes into the military and comes back because he wants to escape, but, he doesn't get away.
One of the biggest things for me with him wanting to escape is I think this is what brings on the idea of being a vampire. We set it up that his dad died and then his mom killed herself, right? And me and Don are probably going to argue later about whether he's really a vampire or not. But this is my entire reason that he can't be a vampire. I mean, I think he's a bloodsucker, obviously, but a supernatural vampire. I don't think that he is one. I think this is extremely about him believing that vampires can't die and they can't kill themselves. He's literally protecting himself from the two most traumatic things he's experienced in his life.
Right.
Yeah.
And that hit me really hard because that level of mental illness and just trying to deal with that trauma and build that barrier in your mind that this can't happen to me. But it's not like I can control it, but if I was a vampire, it couldn't happen to me.
Actually, to make it even cooler, I don't think that he said that can't happen to me. I think that his girlfriend asked him, so does that mean they can't die? And he said, I don't know yet.
Ooh, that's even better.
Yeah, because, and that makes me wonder if he had kind of almost this thing planned all along. I mean, things got so bad toward the end that he kind of didn't have a choice and he really wasn't happy with himself. But it makes me wonder if when he said that, he had also said, I have a plan. He said that twice in the movie. And the first time he said it was way earlier in the movie, before he really went nuts and killed the kid and her dad, which is when he decided that he's done. But yeah, he said that he had a plan, and initially I thought that maybe he was just referring to whatever he was going to do with the money. But it makes me wonder if his plan wasn't to do what he eventually did anyway, and he just was, he just kind of like escalated. Now he had a reason to get out of, help his girlfriend. But yeah, when he said, I don't know yet, it makes me wonder if that was alluding to the fact that he was going to see if that can happen, when he did carry through with his plan at the end.
Yeah, or even without the plan, just like the environment around him, people die. Don, what do you think of all this?
Well, I think that it's a great way, again, and going back to his escape, as far as trying to find some way to deal with the trauma of losing both of his parents, and then trying to avoid the idea of death, or just embrace the idea of invulnerability that we all kind of feel when we're that age. But when you see people that are close to you die, it makes you think about those things a lot more, especially with one of the flashbacks that he has. Seeing his mom in that bed, it's a lot more real than, she happens to die in the hospital and somebody comes and tells you. this is something that you experience firsthand. But I think it's a great way for them to have this character worded. As far as how vampires live, how they die, or how they can be killed or kill themselves, whether or not that's the case. But I think with this character, with Milo, I think just like with life, he's just trying to figure it out. He's trying to come into his own identity. So I don't necessarily think it's an issue of he's planning it out. Doesn't know because he's 14. So maybe he has some idea of I'm going to use this money that I've been getting from people from stealing after I kill them. I'm going to use this money to escape. I'm going to get out of here. But I don't know if it was an issue of like he had this full on plan that would have really come to fruition. That would have involved was it Phoebe or Sophie? That would have involved Sophie until like she emerges and then they become close.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the thing is he doesn't want to be too close to her because she'll be somebody else he can lose.
Right. I think that there was one thing that I wish I tried to figure out but I couldn't. If he was like this before his mother passed, or if he became like this after. And I'm wondering also, I have a theory, but I don't, maybe you guys can answer this. I don't recall when he would write on his calendar when he fed, was it only once a month that he would do that? He would cross out the date on the calendar and then flip it over to the next one, the next month.
Yeah, because I remember it was the 13th one month, and then it was the 12th the next month. So I think it was only, because I was trying to figure that out myself as far as whether it was on certain days or if it was just once per month or every few weeks or whatever he was trying to plan out.
Yeah, like he asked,
whether it was by the moon or something.
Well, he asked his brother at one point, what day is it? And he realized, his brother said the 14th, Friday the 14th. And I think that he looked at his calendar and he realizes he had missed his day, which I think was on the 13th again. And I think that I can't be sure, but I have a theory that he was not like this before his mom died. I mean, he was a weird kid, but I don't think he was like this when his mom died. And so when he, didn't know how to cope with her death, I feel like when he tasted her blood, I feel like that was a way of, like a really morbid way of still keeping her around. And I think that he drank blood on the anniversary of her death every month. And that also was a way of reconnecting with her.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, because I really do think it was only once a month and it was the same date.
Huh. Interesting. I don't think that he was watching these extremely violent videos or people getting destroyed. I think he saw the most traumatic thing that he could see, and then nothing else could compare to that trauma, but anything less than that wasn't exciting to him either. Not that you're excited to see your mom die, but it just wouldn't hit you the same way. So I feel like that part of him definitely, for lack of a better word, was fed after that. I would assume he was still an outcast beforehand. His brother doesn't seem to see a big change in him.
No.
And that's big to me. Even with both parents dying, maybe he sees enough of a change. You went through these traumatic things, but he doesn't see like a dramatic shift. Like, oh, you used to have a bunch of friends around and now you're alone all the time.
Mm-hmm. He
just accepts Milo as Milo. But yeah, I agree with all of that, and I love your theory. I hope that's what they intended.
Yeah, I thought that would be cool too. Go ahead, Don.
I was going to say with the brother, based off of my experiences and being around people like this, I think I'm still on the fence that Milo was definitely different, right? But I think the brother doesn't notice because he's going through his own trauma. Because at one point Milo asked him, like, "Hey, did you ever kill anybody?" And that was the first, what that question really made my ears perk up, because that is the question that, for those of you who are listening, if you ever know somebody who's been in the military and deployed, don't ask them this question. It's the worst question you can ever ask them. And the shorthand is, if they tell you without reservation, they're either lying or they're a psychopath. The issue is they're typically not going to tell you that type of situation, what they went through, and if they had to do it. But the brother is real quick to say, no, but I saw some stuff while I was over there. I saw parts, body parts, and I saw this. And then he said, you got to do what you got to do. And it was a way of kind of letting him know, without letting, or at least letting the audience know, like, no, his brother might have. And he's dealing with his own PTSD and his own experience in a way that's kind of shutting things off, because you only see him in the house or in the apartment, like lying down in the living room watching TV, or maybe sitting up. There's really no moment where the brother is fully engaged in anything. It just seems as though, like, fuck it, the outside world is out there. I'm going to stay here where I feel safe, not have to deal with any of the bullshit that's out there. So with him and his brother, I think it was an issue of, he's not really looking for anything other than, that's my brother Milo. He's a little weird, but I don't need to take enough time to really go and invest any of my time and my energy to figure out what's going on with him. Because you've got the school counselors, talking to him, trying to speak with him, trying to understand exactly what's going on with his head. But I think the brother is dealing with his own trauma of, one, losing both the parents, but then also seeing the things that he saw in war. He's probably just cut off from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And until that scene, I thought, why don't you get up off your lazy ass, dude? Because he would just lay around, But when he said, do you kill it? And I'm like, oh, okay, this dude is probably on disability or, suffering from PTSD. So then I understood, because he wasn't a bad guy, but like you said, he was going through his own stuff, but he no longer associated with his old friends anymore. Right. And and he did love his brother. That was clear, but that was just how both those guys were just hardened, and that was love for them, was to just say goodnight or say hello, and when his brother, they kind of celebrated with him a little bit in some minor way when he found out that he had a girlfriend, and right. He even asked her, you really like him? And then you could tell that, kind of warmed him, his heart for his brother.
One of the kickers for me, following the death question, is the brother specifically says, someone out there is always doing something worse than you. I took that to mean he either killed people or he saw some fucked up shit or did some fucked up shit, but it was war and it's my job, so it's fine. Yeah, I killed this guy, but it's not like I was torturing people. It's not like I killed someone in the neighborhood like my asshole friends I used to hang out with. Like, that justification that no matter what I did, doesn't matter. Somebody did something worse. But the way he's so shut down, I really feel like he did some shit, And he could have even killed somebody when he was hanging with those guys before he went away. I do believe, like Don said, that he went into the military to try to get away from all of this. And with his parents both dead, he got pulled back in. But I don't know. I mean, clearly we didn't get those answers. That's just my impression.
It was a sad scene because, you could tell that Milo was he was trying to connect with somebody. And I would assume that had his brother said, yes, I have killed somebody, he probably would have felt a lot better, because he was already a loner. He was an introvert. But then he was now he's really alone. because he's had these experiences where he's killed people, and he can't talk to anybody about it, and he doesn't know anybody else that's done that other than the gangbangers downstairs that he had zero respect for and didn't want anything to do with. But his brother, he liked him, and I would think that would make him feel better if they could connect, even if his brother didn't know, because his brother didn't. But
yeah, I agree with all of that.
There was a when they went to was it Sophia? Is that her name? Sophie. Okay, when Sophie and Milo went to go see Nosferatu at the movie theater, they showed a little bit of the movie, but the first part that they showed was a quote, like because it's a silent film. The quote was, "Oh yeah, only a virtuous woman who gives her blood by choice can end the curse of Nosferatu." And I was wondering what you guys thought of that. If you thought that it was alluding to the idea that Milo was looking for a way out of something that he deemed a curse by sort of grooming the girl so that she would ultimately give up her blood, or do you think that was just some other kind of symbolism for because the girl was not virtuous. She was getting banged by all those dudes when Milo ran into her, like those 4 or 5 white kids.
Yeah.
But I just wonder if that, zeroing in on that quote, if it meant something to Milo or if it was supposed to mean something to us and kind of some kind of symbolism. Only a virtuous woman who gives her blood by choice can end the curse.
I think for Milo, it would have meant something, but then this is the first person he's connected with. So where is he going to find that person that fits that description? Because later in the film, he envisions like cutting her open and drinking her blood. Yeah. So it's not even this moment where you think like, oh, it's Sophie sitting there saying like, oh, Milo, let me help you, and an officer neck or officer wrist. There's not a moment like that he envisions. He envisions like cutting her open. Yeah. And taking her blood. So, maybe it would have been getting her out of the way and then moving on to the next person, or at least, eventually, find somebody that would fit that description. But, even when he was explaining the rules with vampires, she was asking him those questions. He said, oh, this isn't true. This isn't true. Vampires have been around longer than books. So, there's got to be all these other things that go on. You can walk in the sun. You can do this. You don't glitter or shimmer or whatever it is. Spark. You don't do any of that stuff. Yeah. And so, I thought it was cool that he was attacking the mythology about vampires to, I guess, I hate to say this, but kind of assert his dominance as a vampire. Or his rationale as to why he would be a vampire or a better vampire. Yeah.
Well, he also eliminates the things that prove that he's not a vampire. Like, if those things make vampires, he doesn't accept those rules. He basically warps it all to fit his agenda. So 2 things. One, I hate this scene where he thinks about stabbing her in the neck. I think it would be a million times better and stronger if it was him grabbing that little knife, staring at her neck, like we're getting close-ups of the knife, we're getting close-ups of the neck, that tension building. Is he gonna do it? And then he just puts it back in his pocket. That would have hit me way the fuck harder. When he does what he does, you get this little quick reaction and this little jump, but it really pulled me out of it. I didn't like it. That's me.
Did you not like it while it was happening, or did you feel robbed and cheated because it was like a little daydream?
I didn't like it while it was happening because I didn't believe it at all.
Okay.
It doesn't fit the narrative. So as soon as it didn't go through, I was like, see, even it doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you got your little jump scare, but whatever. I feel like you could have got that emotional kick if you'd gone the other way with the tension. Going back to your quote, I am of the impression that it's the answer. All he had to do, he's in an environment where he's never going to find a virtuous person, a truly innocent, a truly never had sex, never done anything wrong. You're just not going to find that. You're not going to find that anywhere. Everyone in that environment is subjected to things even younger. They're more corrupted. You're never going to find this virtuous person, but she's the most virtuous person in his life. And so if you accept it that way, she's the virtuous woman. All he had to do was go with her when she wanted him to. And that would have broken the supposed curse, which I don't believe in, because he's not a vampire. He's not a supernatural vampire. If he had gone along with her, he stood a chance at a life outside of all this. He would have been outside of the projects. He would have been away out from these gang members, away from his brother. He would have been not staring at the room where his mom died. His life would have just been extremely different. To me, that quote is about the choice that he makes at the end, where he could have just gone with her.
Right. Yeah. Did you guys notice that when he's watching the movies on his laptop that he never watches them? The only time he actually watches the vampire movies are when he's with the girl, and I just wonder if it's, as though it was just like this comforting thing in the background for him. But I wondered if it meant something else too, that, the laptop would be facing him and a vampire movie would be on, but he would just face straight ahead and just have it playing and not even watching it. Maybe because he's seen it so many times and he's just, or it's just like this comforting thing for him.
So just double checking here, he watches the extremely violent videos, right?
Yeah, he does.
So I'm wondering if that's the key right there. If it's because the violent videos are real, whereas the films he's watching are not.
And I think one of those videos was, and this goes back to like his, he being surrounded by death with his parents both dying. I think that the movie that they were watching with the cattle and stuff was Faces of Death. Yeah, because the narrator, I haven't seen that movie in forever, but I remember watching it a couple times in the 80s, and I recognized that narration and it had that goofy music in it, and I think that scene was in there, and that's what they'd been watching.
There's sometimes that people that have been through traumatic events look at other traumatic stuff, but is there a level of comfort, not just with Milo, but is there a level of comfort in watching those things like Faces of Death or Banned from TV, which was popular in the 90s, to kind of reiterate what the brother says, as far as like, no matter what you're doing, somebody out there is doing things worse. It kind of sounds a lot like no matter how bad things are for you, somebody else has it worse out there. I mean, is there this? Mm-hmm. I guess is there any value to the idea that the vicarious watching of violence or traumatic events is soothing? I guess is the best way I could ask that question.
I'm not sure. I know for him, it certainly wasn't like that. I'm sure we've all seen movies that maybe we even regret watching because we initially were watching it because our morbid curiosity, but that was not the case for him. This was something that he wanted to see, that he actively searched out, and he got something out of it on some bizarre level. I don't know if it's more death, and it just all goes back to trying to reconnect with his mom and her basically letting her blood and almost like when you see what his outcome is, it almost feels like a spills her blood almost like in a weird sacrificial way. Not like that's what she meant to do, but can be interpreted as such because he daydreams about that moment. Mm-hmm. And not even like he doesn't even want to visit her grave. It's just he's preoccupied with the moment of finding her dead, of seeing all of that blood. And then I think it's probably the first time he ever tasted blood.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the first time. Or at least in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like your theory that that's why he does it, to relive that moment and keep his mother's memory alive, or whatever his version of that is.
Yeah, if I watch it again, I'll make sure that I pause it or whatever I need to do to see if the dates are the same. If the dates are the exact same, I would think, because there was a part, I think, that it seems like after he looked at the calendar or right before he looked at the calendar, I could have swore he had like this little, I think it's when he had a flashback of with his mom. And I think that's how I kind of made that connection.
Yeah, almost like he missed his opportunity to reconnect.
Yeah. And for us, it was a sign of hope, because he's not thinking about that so much now. He's thinking about Sophie.
Right.
And he's starting to normalize a little bit and, open up to her. And so him missing a really important date was kind of a ray of hope. I was just going to say one thing that I didn't like about it was the movie was a really well done, really intelligent. But at the end, I felt like it kind of spoon-fed you a little bit because there was that narrative. And it spelled out what he had just done instead of allowing it for interpretation. Like he was talking about, that they can't die of suicide, but what if they set it up? And so
Right.
kind of like, it's like, yeah, we just watched that. And now you're telling me instead of what you've already just shown me. And that was a little disappointing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like that was a total pullback. There's nothing overly hard about it to begin with. It's pretty straightforward. I don't feel like they needed to explain this. If the audience was paying attention, you should have known what just happened without me explaining it to you. Especially when he makes the decision not to go. Then he goes out of his way to give the gang members the stolen goods. He goes out of his way to go to the police. It's very obvious that this was planned and that he set it up. This wasn't random at all. I thought this was way too heavy-handed at the end. And I don't like that they keep going, what if they planned it out? It did not work for me. I don't like it.
I wonder too if I think that I mentioned earlier that I wondered if by him saying the plan the first time he said that he had a plan, that if he was maybe thinking about what he was going to eventually do. The more I think on it, I think the second time he knew for sure what he was going to do, and not the first time that he said it. I think he was referring to another plan or just a wait and see approach. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep all of this money. But I think what really started maybe opening his eyes a little bit to having a way out of this via suicide was their discussion about True Blood. Because at the end, he started drawing the sun, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, the whole thing about the sun was a really great nod to the conversation that they had earlier about the mythology that gets created about vampires, whether it happens to be literature, whether it happens to be television, movies, because you see all of those come into play throughout the film. And it's great that they have that discussion between Sophie and Milo about, these kind of rules that we all adopted and believe in that have to deal with these monsters, these supernatural beings. Because Sophie, gives an example of a vampire killing himself and says, hey, this guy that was on True Blood did it. He went out and stood out in the sun and killed himself, or, was destroyed by the sun. With Milo drawing those suns toward the end, it's a great callback to that conversation, because now you realize that he's planning something or has been planning something, and he's waiting for it to come to fruition. Which, it goes back to what the two of you were talking about earlier. He didn't necessarily need to have that narration for us, but it was necessary for her. So that at least when she finds out, or at least searches and finds out that he's dead, that it had to do with a choice that he made.
That's true. That's a good point.
And he didn't want to hurt anybody. And that was despite what his brother was saying about, no matter what you do, there's somebody out there doing worse. It was the issue of he didn't want to continue hurting people.
Yeah.
And I think it was the issue that he himself was still hurting and not knowing how to deal with it, which was causing him to hurt others. So the only thing he can do it now is, I need to get out of here. Which, we talk about the planning and stuff. And we briefly mentioned this, but the gang members that happen to live in the projects, when the one guy comes looking, or excuse me, the couple comes looking for drugs, and the guy follows Milo into the building, it's very interesting that was Milo plotting and thinking, like, I'm going to drag him out here, and I know these guys are going to kill him, and they'll get in trouble, and they'll never bother me again. Because
I don't think so. I think he was going to kill the kid.
Well, that's what I initially thought, but when the other guys, it just, I don't know, it just seemed kind of too good for that situation to be set up, because I couldn't imagine him killing anybody in his projects, because it would be too close to his home.
Right. I think the only reason why I thought that is because that seemed to be his kind of MO. He would he even wrote in his book, he said, make them come to you. Trick them into coming to you, which is what he did in the park when he was pretending that he was hurt or dead or whatever. And then of course he did follow the one drunk guy home, but I think that was more of this guy's a real jerk and he needs to go kind of a thing, and I needed to drink.
The interesting thing with that scene to me was the way he sort of just watches. It's very much like the violent videos he's been watching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's behind a screen, literally, and he's watching this real life tragedy happen. It's an extreme violence, and he watches them kill somebody. And then he walks over, stares at the dead dude, and doesn't drink the blood.
Right.
He pauses like he's going to, and then he just leaves.
Yep. Yeah, I noticed that.
I did not know what to make of that. I didn't know if he was like, I didn't kill him, so I can't do it. But like that doesn't work with his mom. Or is it the date like you were talking about earlier?
Right.
And if it's the date, then what did he have this guy killed for? Whether he was going to kill him, whether he was setting him up, what was the point of this? Is he just trying to have a live action violent video? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea. A funny story about the True Blood though thing. I must have been 6 years ago. I wrote a story called Self-Immolation. I had never seen True Blood before, and I wrote a story called Self-Immolation about a vampire who, it was written in first person, and it had been around for a long, long time. And he essentially, it was almost like a journal entry, sort of like a confessional kind of thing, where he was tired of not only what he had done, but the world that he was living in, and that mankind was doing to themselves more than he's ever done to anyone. And despite, having killed various, so many people over the last, 100 or 200 years or whatever, got to the point where now the planet that he lives on, they're doing man versus man, doing far worse things than what he's done and what he's experienced. So with a combination of being tired of living on the planet and experiencing this and having it make it feel like he's nothing in comparison, and being guilt-ridden for what he has done because watching others do it has kind of helped give him this epiphany, he goes to his favorite park in Colorado and waits for the sunset to come up for the sole purpose of killing himself. And I at the time I thought this is a great idea, and I had it published and everything, and then probably I think it was like 3 years later I saw True Blood, and I was so mad. I was so mad when I saw that what was his name, Godric, do that thing that I thought no one had done before. My wife and I were watching it, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me right now. And yeah, I didn't feel like a very good author at that point. I thought everyone's going to think I ripped that off, And I remembered that again today because I watched Transfiguration again today. And I remembered that when they mentioned True Blood, and I felt kind of bitter in that scene. In 94, I wrote a short story that was very close to The Sixth Sense. You didn't know at all that the guy was dead the whole time, and neither did he. And then when The Sixth Sense came out, several years later, I was like, oh man, I wrote this kind of. But Sixth Sense is much better than what I wrote. That's for sure.
I had a very good kill scene all drawn up, ready to go. And then I took a break to play a video game. It was Mafia 3. And one of the kill scenes that you have in the game was the exact one. It was basically this local clan leader. The guy, like, he hammers him to a cross, stands the cross up, and then lights it on fire. It's like, son of a bitch, that was what I was going to do. And I was just like, all right, let me just throw this into the trash. It's over.
So did you guys like the movie?
I liked it. Like I talked to you before we started. I liked having the concept of a nerdy black kid or a weird black kid to break up the stuff that we typically see with these types of stories. It's allowing him to express a different perspective than what he's surrounded by. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, he could have chosen anything. He could have chosen any type of escape to not have to deal with the emotional and trauma that he had gone through, as well as the trauma from having to deal with the people that he's surrounded with. Mm-hmm. And he goes with vampires, right? Yeah. Traditionally, when we talk about vampires themselves, whether we're talking about Dracula and Bram Stoker's Dracula, or we're talking about Anne Rice's series, or any Charlene Harris's series, when we're talking about those things that come up, predominantly, if not like 99% of the vampire representation that you have is white, right? Mm-hmm. There's very little color that's added to it. The only diversity that you get typically is with respect to sexuality and sexual orientation. And so for this one, it was really cool to have this kid that's looking at it and saying like, no, fuck you. I want to be a vampire. Yeah. He doesn't see those constraints put on him. What was funny is Sophie never even asked that question of like, yeah, like how many black vampires are there besides Blade and Blackula and Vampire in Harlem? Like that's, I'm sure somebody listening is going to give like 10 more that are out there, but those are the more prominent ones that are out there that we all know of. And it's great to have that perspective from this young man who is from a very low socioeconomic group. He's living in government housing. He's surrounded by drugs and crime, and he chooses this as his vehicle of escape. And he's comfortable with it for the most, it's like he's writing about it. He's going out and planning his attacks and things like that. He's trying to perfect it. Mm-hmm. Just like somebody with any type of art or sport is like, I'm going to try and do the best I can to get the hell out of here.
Right.
I just wish he had gone with Sophie.
Yeah. But then we wouldn't have had that really cool ending. That was a cool ending.
It was definitely a good ending. I like I said, the ending lacks the emotional punch that I would like because I think it's overdone. But overall, I would not change the ending. Like if Milo was a real person, yes, I want him to go with Sophie. I want him to get out of his entire trauma, but at the same time, I understand trauma enough to know how fucked up he would have been no matter where he was, right? Mm-hmm. But no, this is the ending that it needed. Like, I love this film. I did not expect to. Like, when you pitched it to me and I hadn't heard of it, I went and I looked it up and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, I'll probably like parts of it. Or it's probably got some social commentary to it. And like I was watching it and I was literally like rewinding stuff and watching this scene again or different things like that. And I really liked this. So yeah, I think it's a good movie. And I think that it works really well with this ending.
Yeah, it's a movie that not everyone's going to like too, especially if you're used to like just watching kind of like trendy big budget stuff and you're not used to the quietness of an indie film, because this could bore someone to death, but it's so right up my alley. And if you stick it out, I mean, I feel like it just really, really pays off.
No, like I said, I had a different impression about the ending. Like I wanted him to escape. It's not necessarily gonna be a happy ending because he is still gonna have to deal with that trauma, but just to get away from the situation he was in. And in that letter, he writes out, if your meaning for, and I'm paraphrasing, if your meaning for being is to cause pain, is your existence valid or necessary, right? So he starts to question if all he's doing is causing pain, does he really need to be around? And when the film ends, the lyrics of the song play out, and it states or it reads, "When you have no one can hurt you." So it's that idea of rejecting everyone. He doesn't necessarily, he has a healthy enough relationship with his brother Lewis, but I don't get the sense that he's so tied to him to where, I can't leave Lewis behind, or Lewis feels like, the sense I get from Lewis is they have enough of a generational gap between them that they weren't growing up together in the same house at the same time. So I'm guessing Lewis has got 8 or 9 years, probably 10 years on him. So, Milo was a little kid. They didn't like grow up and play ball together and do all these things that brothers of, with a 1 year or 2 year separation might have. And he had gone into the military. So he's probably gone 2 or 3 years out of that time. So, he's missing a lot of time with his brother. But when Sophie comes around, it almost seems as though he needs to validate, I guess, himself as being unworthy by not having anybody around. Because if he's alone, it's just proof that nobody really cares. If Sophie wanted to be there, she would be there. It grasps a lot of things that you feel when you are dealing with trauma or dealing with any type of PTSD or emotional violence or abuse. It's that idea of like, fuck it. Nobody wants me around. Nobody cares about me. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he feels that Sophie really cares about him, or he's just unsure because, one, he's 14 and he's dealing with all these things. So what does it matter if he's around? Sophie, go live your life. Here's all the money. Leave. Go take care of yourself.
I think that the catalyst for that was killing that girl. And right. And that, at that point, realizing that he's not good. And that was also a pivotal moment in the movie where he was almost like this anti-hero. And then at that point, it switched big time. As soon as he attacked that girl, it was like, okay, this isn't a good guy anymore. Even though he's killing people, innocent people, you still have all these feelings for him. But when he killed that girl, for me, it switched. And then, he made up for it, after, because the first time we see him cry is on the way home from killing that girl and her dad. Mm-hmm. And, but I think that, he also puked right away when he drank her blood and didn't puke after drinking the drunk guy's blood. So I don't know if he got sick regardless anyway when he would do that, usually when he would lay in bed at night. But I think that had more to do with the fact that what have I done? This is a little kid, and he had a chance to kill a kid once, and he didn't do it out in the woods. But that quote that you're talking about, the line where I can't remember exactly what it said about if you're not doing any good, then what that you shouldn't be around or something. I can't remember. Right. I'm paraphrasing. I wonder too if that wasn't the way he kind of interpreted his mother's death, and why she killed herself, and that he kind of learned that from her. and that she maybe had that attitude, and that's why she, slit her wrists and died, and so he's doing the same.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I like that.
That was the last thing I had that I felt was important to include.
Yeah.
I've tried to, especially when they mentioned True Blood. True Blood was really good with this. The closing credits song was typically tied into the title of the show to remind you of the theme that you had been experiencing all throughout. So they always had like something that was tied in. Either the title of the song matched in some way the title of the episode, whether it had to deal with loneliness or had to deal with family, bloodlust, whatever it happened to be. So I like the way that they did this film at the end, where it gives you that overarching, idea, or that umbrella of, how he probably felt every day after his parents had gone.
Yeah. I did have one thing. I just want to say that I absolutely loved his very blunt statement about Twilight at the end. I was like, you better not like that book, kid. And he's like, I read Twilight. It sucked.
Yes.
At least he read it for her. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So I think that wraps everything up. I really appreciate you suggesting this film. Like I said, I hadn't even heard of it, so I really liked this. I believe Don did as well. So
yes, I did.
So thank you so much for that. And do you want to tell people where they can find you online and find your books and such?
Yeah, you can just go to chadlutzke.com. That's ChadLutzke. And you can get hooked up through wherever through there, whether it be Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, and of course Amazon, if you want to help me pay the bills. Read a good book.
Awesome. Well, I guess that'll wrap it until next week. So until then, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we will see you next week here at thenecronama.com.